Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Strathroy-Caradoc Police Services Board meeting of Tuesday, November the 21st, 2023. The time is 10 a.m. and it's time to begin. First of all, we ask by taking roll call. What is the roll call?
All members are present with the exception of Member Wiersma.
Thank you very much. And just before we approve the agenda, as chair of the committee, I'm going to cede the floor to the mayor who would like to make an announcement today.
Thank you, Chair. I know I said these same words last night at our regular council, but it does seem appropriate that I reiterate them here in this meeting. I know I speak for not just this council, but all citizens of our community when I say that we value and appreciate all the work and sacrifice made by our first responders, fire, police, and paramedic. Last week, this community lost a member of that family. This community mourns the loss of London Fire Department Captain Chris Brunick. Captain Brunick's tragic passing from cancer has been classified as a line of duty death. Chris was a longtime resident of Mount Bridges. He and his families are fixtures at not just Mount Bridges, but the entirety of Strathroy-Caradoc. In June, Chris stood right here in this chamber and spoke eloquently about the dangers of occupational related cancer. Even at the last, he was giving back to the community. On behalf of Strathroy-Caradoc, I want to express our deepest condolences to Chris's family. As the firefighter's prayer says, please bless with your protecting hands my children and my wife. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor, for your words, and I think that they certainly are echoed by all members of this committee. With that said, let's move on to number 2, the approval of the agenda. The recommendation is that the November 21st, 2023 Police Services Board meeting agenda be approved as circulated. I'd be looking for a mover, Member Hall, and a seconder, Mayor Grantham. All those in favor? Thank you very much. On to number 3, declaration of pecuniary interest. Are there any today? Seeing none, we'll move on to number 4, presentations. And this is item 4.1, and we have a presentation today. But what I will do is I will ask the Chief if he could please introduce it.
Thank you, Chair. I'll maybe just call Constable Ian Frey up. Ian, if you want to stand at this microphone here. I'll give a brief introduction. First and foremost, I want to thank Ian for coming this morning. He's in between scheduled shifts. He worked this past weekend and will be back on duty tomorrow. So again, I want to thank him for coming here on his day off. A very quick introduction of Ian. Ian joined our service back in 2019. Prior to coming to Strathroy-Caradoc, Ian commenced his policing services with the Peel Regional Police Service, becoming a sworn officer in February of 1989. And I can attest to that because I saw a recent Ontario Police College photo, a black and white photo, I believe it was, of Ian when he was graduating. He spent some time in the Uniform Division in both Brampton and in the city of Mississauga. Spent some time in Divisional Criminal Investigation Bureau, as well as Central Robbery Unit. He was promoted to the rank of sergeant. Spent some time in court services, some further time in the Criminal Investigation Bureau, including the Auto Squad, Street Crime, and Gang units. Has some experience and training and supervision in public order, covert handler, and crisis negotiation. His presentation this morning to the board is really meant to outline the development of informants in this community, the value that it brings to our police service, allowing us to further investigations. He probably won't speak to this element in his presentation, but I certainly want the board to be aware and recognize that with Ian's arrival to our service, he really has taken on a role of coaching and mentoring a lot of our younger members. And in this area specifically, in development of informants, which is a unique skill set in itself, he's done a tremendous job in giving a lot of our members, both young and older, the confidence and the skill sets to be able to develop and maintain these relationships that really do further and assist our investigations. And I think on a monthly basis, the board sees some of that work, maybe not being able to connect all the dots back to the use of informants, but certainly the increase in our charges related to drug activity in this community. A lot of that is hinging on the information that we are canvassing and cultivating from our informants that do lead to the execution of search warrants, the seizure of drugs and or weapons, and the processing of charges through the criminal courts. So with that little introduction, I will turn the floor over to Ian, whose presentation is more verbal than a presentation as far as a screen sort of up on the thing. So with that, Ian, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Chief. Thank you, Board. If anybody has any questions throughout, please feel free to interject. It's fairly fluid. Not a whole lot of structure here. I just like to outline some of the things we do and why we do them.
Is the microphone on there, Deputy? Is it on? Yep.
Yep. Okay, so with regards to, I'll reference the term confidential human sources. I can call them sources or CHS for short, so just as the vernacular. There's three primary motivations that people provide information to the police. The first one is judicial consideration, where they may be charged before the courts and they want some leniency through the courts. They provide information to us. We then liaise with the Crown Attorney's Office. The Crown Attorney's Office has final carte blanche as to whether they withdraw, diminish the sentence, or however they may apply that information to the charges. The second one is civic duty, where somebody sees something in the community they dislike or they want to change, they provide that information to the police as a means of feeling good about themselves in the community. And the third one that we primarily deal with at the Strathroy Police is financial consideration, whereby persons provide information in exchange for money. The present funding is geared towards the service providing monetary consideration in exchange for information. This information takes two forms. It's actionable or prompt information. For example, the information be provided that there may be a cache of drugs at an address or a firearm or a wanted party, and that information is generally acted upon in short order. The second is intelligence-based, and that information is added to a database. It may or may not have some recognition at the time, but down the road or at a later time, either by our service or another agency, that information may be the conduit to providing some form of enforcement down the road. An informant or a source may be active or inactive, depending upon their criminal involvement or associations, and that involvement may morph in and out, where they're active, inactive, and so forth, depending upon whatever they may be doing or whoever they may be associating with. Some examples of fairly recent source information that relates to the community and community safety. In 2022, it resulted in the arrest of a loaded gun, fentanyl. The individual was a prolific offender. They were on a lifetime prohibition for firearms, and they are presently serving a 7-year sentence. The second one, there was the arrest in, I think it was April of this year, 7 ounces of fentanyl to a 70-year-old woman who was dealing on behalf of her daughter in Strathroy. That amount of fentanyl in the community is significant. It's the largest seizure. At the time, it was the largest seizure, I think, in southwestern Ontario. A recent intelligence project wrapped up by the OPP last week. It resulted in the amount of 22 ounces of fentanyl, 2 loaded firearms, and there were several prolific offenders who were arrested or were incarcerated. One of those was previously arrested 2 years ago here with a loaded shotgun, and he had relocated to Elsa Craig because of the enforcement actions that are ongoing here. So he can operate somewhat with immunity or impunity in Elsa Craig, whereas when he comes here, he's recognized and it's a bit more problematic for him to operate. A recent gun warrant 2 weeks ago, 2 replica handguns were located. That individual is on a lifetime firearms or weapons prohibition as a result of a 7-year conviction for armed robbery in Toronto some years ago. So he, subject to the testing of the firearms, will likely be facing further jail time. And a recent drug search warrant, heroin, cocaine, fentanyl, crack, meth, related to a female in town who is currently serving 7 years in federal penitentiary. And that arrest and the background of that relates to a involvement with organized crime in the community. Just to highlight the importance of source information is it identifies crime trends within the community. So the officers will identify them in the community by their day-to-day interactions. However, the sources can rapidly accelerate that process for us in recognizing trends and then trying to commit to some form of crime fighting strategy. Intelligence gathering, what might seem insignificant at the time, a phone number, a nickname, a vehicle license plate may be, again, the conduit to some form of major enforcement, either here or elsewhere in Ontario. The source information generally relates to serious criminal offenses such as guns and drugs, and the impact of enforcement and how it changes, how the offenders change based upon enforcement. With the prevalence of outside persons coming into the community from, we're seeing them from Hamilton, we're seeing them from Toronto, we're seeing them from all of the GTA, they're coming here, 402 corridor, 401 through London, Sarnia. Without source information, we would have a very difficult time of identifying those persons, vehicles in the community without first-hand information as it relates to who they were. You can identify a car or a driver, but not necessarily, you can maybe identify the owner, but not necessarily the person driving it, given some of the limitations we're faced with from law enforcement. The source information provides timely information with regards to how we execute search warrants, not only what we're looking for in the house or the vehicle, but where to look in some of the hiding spots that we encounter that are becoming more and more sophisticated. When possible, when we're using source information, it's preferable to have more than one source. Obviously, some of our recent enforcement actions have taken 4 or 5 sources that relate to the same information, and it's generally consistent, but there's always a minor difference in the information they have based upon their affiliation, the person or the group. When using source information for us, it's necessary to prove them reliable and corroborate the information that they provide us. And they provide a demonstrated reliability moving forward through payment and the results that they provide us. For example, we don't just act on information that there's a gun in the house. We have to do our due diligence, verify whether we think that information is legitimate, corroborate other information that's provided. That information is sourced through the courts. If it's not, doesn't pass the test, the soundproof test, then that warrant isn't issued for due reason. So it's important that we corroborate the information that they provide us rather than just act on it, on the face of it. And if I could just leave you with one speaking point, the primary consideration for us when dealing with human sources is protecting and balancing their safety and their anonymity, as well as the integrity of the police service. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that. Very enlightening, and I think it's appropriate the police board hears about this activity and better understands what's going on, and as well the community gets to hear your message. Chief, just before I turn it over for questions to the police board members, do you have any comments to frame Constable Freight's remarks?
Yes, thanks again, Chair. So excellent information shared by Constable Freight. There's 3 or 4 sort of points I wanted to highlight to ensure that it resonated with the board. And Ian sort of just touched on it near the very end about the importance and the sort of the structure of working with informants, not only for the protection, the safety, the protection of their privacy, but also the integrity of the police service. You know, this isn't just a sort of a meet in a dark alley, hope to get information and then cut the informant loose. You know, there's a lot of obligations on the service and the member who is working with that informant to ensure that they are working within the rules, the guidelines that are implemented. Another point, we talk quite regularly here in this forum about the engagement of our community members. This presentation highlights that the importance of a lot of participants in our community are required to help us identify and solve crime. And there is an important role for informants who, for a lot of the reasons that Ian has identified, really accelerate, in some cases, our investigations and move them a lot quicker so that we can execute a warrant, we can seize property and weapons, and we can process and proceed with charges. I know Ian also talked a little bit about violators that are coming into our community from outside areas. So again, as we process and go through certain investigations and we perhaps seize and or charge people, unfortunately in the drug culture, there's this vacuum effect where when someone gets maybe taken out of being able to operate, there's always someone who's willing to slide in and become the next supplier. And again, not only are we relying on informants to help us provide that information, but again, I also want to recognize the great work that our uniformed members are doing, being the eyes and the ears on a 24/7 basis, stopping cars, sitting on addresses, and getting that information, that intelligence, which, as Ian has identified, doesn't always come in one lump sum, but there's a little piece here, a little piece there, that really at the end of the day, end of the week, end of the month, helps put together the puzzle so that there is a very clear picture of what is going on. And I'll just sort of leave it at this, is that as I led into, with my introduction of Ian, the importance of cultivating not only the informants, but building the competency for our members to have the understanding and the rationale for working and developing informants. It really does align with strategic goals and priorities of the service, and that is to deter and prosecute criminal activity in this community. So those are sort of my comments, but again, I certainly would open it up and offer the board an opportunity to ask Constable Frape any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions? Member Hahn.
I have a few, and thank you for your presentation, Constable Frappe. It was very interesting, and it's an important tool for policing and protecting the public. You had mentioned at the beginning that there was often informants look at the monetary consideration, but I was wondering also, do some of the informants also bring this information forward to reduce their sentencing that they may currently have?
Yep.
I thought I had heard that
Yes,
also.
So that speaks to the judicial consideration component, whereby a member provides information that's tangible, we act on it, whatever the results are. We would then, if they're seeking judicial consideration, forward that to the senior Crown Attorney. The senior Crown Attorney then reviews all the facts of the case, weighs it against the information that's provided, and determines whether they're going to apply some leniency. That may be monetary fine reduction, it may be sentence reduction, it may be a charge withdrawal, depending upon what that individual may be facing. So that does come into play with the judicial consideration. However, with that, we don't have a lot of control over the final result.
Okay.
And that differs from us. In the monetary we do, in the judicial consideration we don't.
Okay. So the informant, and I'm going to assume, let's say it's a drug case of sorts, and that person, not the informant, but someone is sentenced. And how dangerous is it for the informant? Like, I'm thinking the discovery process, you know, where they're trying to gather all the information, and actually there's a great deal of reliable information from that informant. how do you protect that informant?
Well, what I would say to you is that for the most part, the individuals that are operating in the criminal underworld in our town are already doing so. So the police are not subjecting them and instructing them to go out and seek forth this information. They're already entrenched in that drug subculture. So it's not something new that they're embarking upon, infiltrating a gang and determining who the members are and all the intelligence that may result of that. They're already entrenched in those scenarios. As I said in my closing remarks, it's highly important we obviously protect their integrity and ours, and also their safety. So when it comes to actionable information, if that information would reflect on potentially the identity of that person, then obviously we don't act on it because it would expose them. In exposing them, yes, in exposing them, that deters anybody else from ever providing information because they see it as an exposure, not as a positive result.
Ian, if I may, can you just take a few minutes to maybe explain the difference between an informant and an agent?
Yes.
You sort of started down that
So
path.
there's two factions we deal with. Primarily it's informants, but there is an agent. A police agent is somebody who's directed by the police. Okay. The difference in rules and regulations that govern the two are vastly different. So an agent would be instructed to, again, say, for example, infiltrate a group and provide information. That's highly dangerous. It's a completely different scenario, and it's oftentimes more problematic trying to manage an agent than it is an informant, because it's specifically directed at a certain task. So for the most part, and since I've been here, I don't believe there's been any direction of agents, just because it is very problematic to direct, and it's very time consuming, and quite truthfully, I don't think it would be something that we would act on as an agency without bringing in outside resources.
And you again, you had mentioned about the monetary consideration for the informant. Is that really key to those informants bringing forward that really important information? Is that maybe key to them?
Yes, it is.
That's
because
what I thought.
A lot of the persons that operate within the criminal subculture come from nothing, have nothing,
Yes.
and in their future there really is nothing.
Okay.
The monetary consideration provides an outlet for them. It provides some relief financially for them. So a lot of times it takes them some time to recognize that information translates to money, but that is generally the key conduit towards them providing the information in the first place.
And how does the police service determine that monetary consideration?
Well, we would weigh what the information is that's been provided. There's sometimes an accumulative process whereby they've provided information in the past that's led to a financial consideration. As that information continues, there can be an elevation in the amount of money that they're paid, and those requests for funding we place through the senior command, and they review the information and determine whether I'll ballpark a number that I'm anticipating would be a preferred amount of payment, and then the senior command would review that and either reject it or agree with it, and the funds are paid out accordingly.
So a good accountability process.
Yes, it's not just me saying I'd like $1,000 from this person who provided a gun.
Exactly.
The senior management might say, well, there's been no other contact. This is a $500, and that's their prerogative based upon the processes we have in place.
Thanks so much.
Are there any other questions by member Hall?
Second time in the car, thanks. Yeah, once again, thank you for coming in. That was very informative. I was always under the impression that informants usually work just for sentence leniency, but the monetary motivation was new for me. I think member Hahn answered a couple of the questions I had. I was just curious, I'm not sure if you're able to share kind of ballpark how much they get paid for the info. I think you said kind of 500 to 1,000. Like, is that pretty typical, or is it?
No, it's not, and I don't want to earmark a number.
Yep.
Because I understand this is a public record.
If you can't, that's.
I'd be cautionary towards doing that. I will say that the information, the funds that are provided are commensurate to the information that's provided. So we're not going to pay, $700 for a nickname. It all has to make sense in the grand scheme of things. I don't know what else I can really
That's
without maybe divulging too much.
Yeah. And then the follow-up then, I think this one would be probably for the chief. Where in the budget do we usually pull for this?
So through the chair to Member Hall. So there is a line, a GL number in the operating budget for intelligence funds. You'll probably see or recognize, if you were to look at it over the last 3 to 4 years, that number has started to creep up higher and higher. Again, as we have become, certainly as a service, more active in cultivating and using informants, there is a greater demand for funds to support that program. So it's in the operating budget lines, I believe, under police operations.
Perfect, thank you.
Mayor Grantham?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Constable, for your report. You just made a comment that this is a public forum, and I think we are thankful in this case that it is a public forum, because it's important for the public to hear what the police service does. And I reiterate again, and I'm sure echo the sentiments of everyone, we're extremely fortunate to have our own police service, so I think it is good that this is a public forum and they can hear about the work that's happening. I did have one question, and just more curiosity. You referenced 7 ounces of fentanyl.
Yes.
I know it's a very minuscule number that can cause death. I don't know if you know, what is that? It's a very, very low number that can cause death of fentanyl.
Sorry, I'm not sure.
But what is the amount of fentanyl that can cause death? Because 7 ounces doesn't sound a lot.
So I believe you could take a fatal overdose at 0.01 grams.
Okay. That's the point I wanted to drive home. That is a significant amount.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. And just as chair, I just want to thank the constable for coming here today, but I also want to acknowledge the importance in our independent police force of Strathroy-Caradoc, the importance of strategic hiring and bringing the expertise of other constables into our police force, as well as sometimes hiring people who are local. And I think we get a good mixture of imported expertise that allows our officers to be mentored, and we also have people who are familiar with the community who can also inform people who are hired from outside about the local culture. So I think it's a good mix, and I think it's a strategic aspect of the administration to build our force in that fashion. Okay. Any other concluding remark, Chief?
No further comments, Chair.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Constable. I appreciate your report. We'll move now on to number 5, reading and correction or approval of minutes. Number 5.1, general meeting minutes of October the 17th, 2023. The recommendation is that the meeting minutes of October 17th, 2023, the general meeting of the Strathroy-Caradoc Police Service Board, be approved as written. Do we have a mover? Member Hall. And Your Worship, Mayor Grantham. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Which moves us to number 6, communications. And the recommendation is that the communication items 6.1 to 6.4 be received for information. Can we do that, please? First, a mover, Member Hall, and second by Member Hahn. And before we vote on that, does anyone have any particular questions about any one of those items, 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, 6.4? Mayor Grantham?
Just 6.3 and 6.4, Chair.
Okay. Any others? Member Hahn?
6.1 and 6.2.
Okay, there we go. So we'll just go through them in order then, and at the end we can vote to accept them. So with that said, Member Hahn, your question on 6.1?
I was wondering if Chair, I should say Chief or Deputy Chief, have we been asked as the Strathroy-Caradoc Police Services Board to provide support to any of our communities in regards to the global mobilization? of the Hamas calls?
So through the chair to Member Hahn, we have not received any direct communications to, I guess, mobilize. The read I had on this correspondence was that Hamas had made sort of a global call asking for a mobilization to support the Hamas initiative. Certainly in the policing community here locally, provincially, and even nationally, there has been lots of communications within the chiefs associations to just ensure that each agency is alive to issues that may arise either locally or even in neighboring communities, so that they have the ability to operationalize if required. So for example, in a neighboring community of London, certainly there has been a number of peaceful protests for both supporting the Palestinian position, but also the Israeli position as well. So it's just more or less having awareness that those events may come forward in your community, and you have an expectation that you will provide a policing response to those issues.
I know that on October 13th, there was definitely increased presence at the Sarnia-Port Huron border. I know we were, as a group, we were trying to travel over the border, and it was like an hour and a half. So I know that date was definitely an important date.
Yeah, just in a follow-up comment, I think coming out of the issues in Ottawa and the Windsor border a couple years ago, policing services in this province are very aligned and have accessibility to make reach outs if you are in need of additional policing resources. And so I think this is part of what this communication for police services in Ontario was meant to accomplish.
And thank you for that. And just a clarification, was it 6.12 that you wanted to speak to, Member Hahn, or was it number 6.2?
Yeah, 6.12. Sorry, I'm
no, that's okay. 6.12. Yeah. Fair enough. Yep.
Shall I proceed then?
Yeah, absolutely. Please proceed.
I was trying to go to just the chart, the CSI chart. I believe it was. Sorry, I'm without my notes today. So it was the chart that I found so interesting in the 6.12. Is that I'm pretty sure this was the one, the chart that had the crime severity index.
Yeah, so through the chair to Member Hahn, I believe that's coming up a little bit later in a different one. 6.1.2 is the risk-driven tracking database, the 2022 annual report, which, if I may, outlines the activities of situation tables, not only, I believe not only in Ontario, but I think nationally. And it's a very lengthy report. There's a lot of information to consume there. So that's what that report is outlining.
My question related on that report, what is physical health? It ranked very high. It was number 3 approximately. And if you could give me an example of what physical health is.
So through the chair to Member Hahn, I don't have the actual definition. I didn't see it in the report. My assumption would be it falls somewhere outside of mental health concerns. So it may be physical limitations, chronic health-related issues that are also causing challenges for community members that are being brought forward to situation tables. Because as the board will be aware, situation tables are collaborations of different agencies from different sectors, justice, health, education, housing, So if a person is being brought forward to a situation table, it may be drawing on the expertise of an agency that maybe deals with the physical well-being of a person as opposed to the mental health piece that they may be challenged with.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Hahn. Mayor, were you next? Was it 6.13?
Yeah, both 6.3 and 6.4.
Not 6.13, but 6.3 and 6.4.
6.3, 6.4.
Okay, any questions on any of the others before that then? So let's move on to 6.3 then, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I'm gonna put them both together, Chair, if I will.
Absolutely,
They're
absolutely.
both traffic concerns, they're both from one particular area, and I, a little bit of a mea culpa. People have been reaching out to me a lot about traffic, the entire community. So I've encouraged them to do two things, reach out to your counselor, reach out to the municipality, and also if you feel it wise, reach out to the police service board. Been lengthy talks as late as last week with both the chief and the deputy chief. And the only thing I want to say to the people who wrote it, if they're watching this, it's not falling into a black hole. Your concerns aren't falling on deaf ears. They're being heard, and I will tell you that both your police department and the municipality are working as quickly as they can to arrive at creative solutions. So that was it, Chair, just a comment, not really a question.
Yes, thank you very much. And I mean, we even heard last night on council, there's an additional problem with a signage disappearing in parts of town as well. It becomes a complication when we're dealing with traffic matters as well. Okay, then with that said, we had a mover and a seconder that the communication items 6.1 to 6.4 be received for information. All those in favor? And that is passed. Thank you very much. I'll move on to number 7, the review of monthly police service reports. And the recommendation is the monthly report 7.1 to 7.6 be received for information. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor, Member Hall, and Your Worship, and Mayor Grantham. And with that said, I'll turn it over to the Chief for his presentation of these items.
Thank you, Chair. Again, just in the essence of time, I will certainly receive or take any questions or comments from any of the information that's in the monthly reports. I didn't really have anything I was specifically going to highlight, but certainly if there's any questions from the members, I would be open to receiving those.
I see the Mayor's hand is up.
Yeah, thank you for the reports, Chief. Just more of a good news on the CID report. The third bullet, the very last comment, given all the questions, concerns regarding bail. I did like to see these words. She remains in custody. That was with regards to the drug arrest. So just given all the concerns and comments and questions regarding bail and back on the street. For some reason, I just highlighted that popped out at me.
Yes, and I would also say that for those who are watching, the monthly activity reports, item 7.1, is a great place for people if they're online, if they want to take a look at what's going on in terms of activity and of our forces. It's a very, very rich area for information. And I know we've talked a lot about traffic enforcement and things like that. But I think when you take a look at the monthly activity reports, you get a better sense of the extent and the variety of activities that our police forces are involved in. So anyone in the community, I would say, please take a look at that. Chief, do you have any things that you want to highlight before we move on?
Thanks again, Chair. I do not. Maybe just to build on your last comment. Again, realizing that there is a multitude of information and data in these reports, we certainly do welcome and encourage any community members, if they do have questions, to make a reach out to us, and we will certainly help try to explain perhaps what a specific or multiple data sets mean and helping them understand what our activities are.
Thank you, and we certainly appreciate the transparency. All right then, with that said, it's been moved and seconded that monthly report 7.1 to 7.6 be received for information. All those in favor? And so it is carried. Thank you. We now move on to number 8, items from Chief M. Campbell. And we start with 8.1, the 2023 staffing update.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I'm just pulling the report up here. So again, just the requirement to ensure that the board is kept well informed. This report just outlines some of the retirements and or resignations that have occurred, in addition to some new or additional hires that have also occurred. So those are listed in that report. I'm just going to really highlight the hire of a cadet recruit, Kelsey Percival, who will be attending the Ontario Police College in December of 2023. This hire was accelerated or moved forward in that 4 or 5 months ago, the province, specifically the Solicitor General Ministry, announced a change to how the recruit intakes at the Ontario Police College were going to occur, including going from 3 intakes a year to 4, eliminating the tuition fee to help meet the demand of the large number of recruits that police services in the province were looking to hire and get through the college. The deputy chief has really been our liaison or point of contact with the college, and the college, because there is now such a high demand for seats or positions at the college, they are asking 3 to 4 months ahead of time for services to commit to having a placement for an officer at the college. And so we didn't want to lose that opportunity and miss being able to send a recruit to the college, and so we were able to secure a seat for the intake starting in December of 2023. As a comment, Kelsey is very familiar with our organization. She is currently an employee with the Canadian Mental Health Association and is one of our MCERT workers, working with our uniform division, specifically Constable McIntyre, as the frontline response to mental health crisis calls in our community. So we were lucky that we certainly had an opportunity to get to know her before we moved into this lane of bringing her into the service as an officer.
Thank you. Any questions on that? Okay, thank you very much. And I'm just playing with my screen here. It's being silly. I think it's yes. All right. And so the recommendation then would be that the board receives report POL 2023-13 for information. Do I have a member? Member Paul. Second, do I have member Han? All those in favor? Thank you very much. And now to item 8.2, which I find particularly interesting, but we'll turn this over to the chief. There's some really good information here.
Yeah, excellent.
Thank you, Chair. So there's 2 reports, or 2 documents with this report. Actually, there's 3, I guess. There's the actual board report, and then there's 2 attachments. I'll quickly explain the one attachment is the Crime Severity Index Frequently Asked Questions. That's a supporting document that hopefully, if the board members had a chance to spend some time reading that one, kind of helps explain how a crime severity index, how that is calculated, how it involves an overall index, how it involves a serious crime index and a non-serious crime index. The other document, the police officer per population, or as it's commonly referred to as the cop per pop, was a document that one of our colleagues, the deputy chief in South Simcoe, put together. It is based on 2021 data. Unfortunately, when you go to gather both complement numbers, budget numbers, population numbers, you're sometimes working in reverse. And so you're working on data that is a year to two past. So really what the intent of providing this information to the board was, as we, and again, the operating or the 2024 budget has been provided to the board and was supported at a previous meeting. I just wanted to also ensure that there was this additional information brought forward to the board so that they had an understanding of where our service sits. One, in relation to the 9 other police services that are used as comparators during the bargaining or contract negotiations. You'll see it represents all of the municipal police services in the province of Ontario. And then at the very bottom of the COP to POP graph, it also has an Ontario average and a Canadian average number. So the 3 areas, when you look at the 9 comparators services, and again, they're the ones highlighted in yellow on this graph. On the COP to the population ratio, only LaSalle and Kawartha Lakes have a higher number in relation to the COP to the population, which means the higher the number means the less number of officers you have per population. So the other, I'll call it the other 7 services, other than LaSalle and Kawartha Lakes, actually have more officers per population than what we do as a service. On the crime severity index, again, the lower the number in this case, the perceived safer your community is. So LaSalle sitting at 19.15, Port Hope at 45.02, and then our service sits at 54.58. So our crime severity, our overall crime severity number is 3rd lowest amongst that comparator group. So the perceived safety in our community is quite low compared to the other groups. And then the last area, the cost per population, we sit 4th, I'll call it 4th cheapest, at $295. Again, LaSalle, Saugeen Shores, and Kawartha Lakes sitting just ahead of us. So it's information that, again, I just wanted the board to, again, have that awareness of, and certainly I will take any questions from the board.
Well, thank you, Chief. I think it's a particularly interesting document for the public when we get to the crime severity index and the cost per officer, as well as other aspects of the comparators. I would also think that this is a document that we should highlight as we move into budget deliberations with council members, because it provides a lot of information in a very small package. And again, it's available to the public for them to take a look at the level of, well, the good value. I wouldn't say cheapest. The good value that we're getting with our service. Again, I have gone on about this before, but I don't know of a comparable municipality in Ontario that has their own police force and their own hospital. And we need to, I think, acknowledge that there's a lot of value in those 2 things, and the more we know about them, I think perhaps the better. Maybe we'll be able to retain them and develop them in the future, even to a higher level of excellence. Any questions on this for the chief? Member Hahn.
This was a really interesting chart, and I wanted to ask a few questions, and I'm really pleased to see Strathroy-Caradoc having the 50.5 CSI crime severity index rate, or And I was obviously comparing it to Ontario, that were lower than the Ontario rate. But I was also really interested in our surrounding community, St. Thomas and Sarnia, which I thought would be a bit lower rate. But I think what this identifies too is, you know, one severe crime in a community, in a small community can certainly escalate that number very quickly. And I think about that situation that was a number of years back that escalates those numbers so quickly.
So thank you again through the chair to Member Hahn. You're correct. An incident, a serious incident, a violent incident certainly can start to move your numbers fairly dramatically. There's additional information that actually provides information nationally. I believe it's 323 police services that does capture provincially here OPP detachments. So maybe at an additional meeting or a future meeting, I can bring the additional information related to even more of a regional map related to the CSI. So specifically, I know when that list comes out on an annual basis, I tend to sort of look at regional services such as London, St. Thomas, Chatham, Kent, Sarnia, who have municipal services. But I'm also interested to see OPP detachments. For example, Middlesex Centre, Thames Centre are captured as individual areas or agencies, for lack of better terms, and to see where our CSI number relates even to those communities. And without having that information in front of me here today, I can tell you that we are very comparable to even what I would describe as fairly large rural areas that maybe lack some of the density and specific problems that sometimes fall inside urban areas that obviously aren't present with those two communities.
And that's interesting because I was going to ask exactly the OPP comparators for this region specifically. I thought that would be interesting, and so if you're bringing that forward at another meeting, I think that's very valuable information. The other comment I was going to bring forward was I was really interested to see, first of all, that Ontario was quite high, but not the highest by any means in consideration to Canada. And I was wondering, and maybe you could make a comment on this, I have no idea what other province is are bringing that Canada rate so high, but I did notice in this chart that any province, I believe, that has a number of First Nations municipal forces or would escalate that number. And is that I would have thought maybe BC would be very high, but I'm also thinking now provinces with high First Nations would escalate those numbers.
So through the chair to Member Hahn, the data that is presented through Stats Canada does have a national sort of landscape to it. As I say, at an additional meeting or a future meeting, I will bring that information from a national lens, and you'll be able to see communities from specific provinces that do have what I will call a high CSI number, and that those communities, it tends to show year over year, remain sort of at the forefront of the high crime severity index number.
That's perfect, because some of those statistics are pretty troubling, I feel, to certain crime severity, and I was just really troubled by the First Nations, the high rate, and I think the emphasis of providing further support is really important in those areas.
Thank you, Member Hahn. And also, as we are going to be entering into a strategic plan process, I think information such as this certainly can be folded into the work that we do as we, I think, try to work on communicating to our municipality the benefits of having an independent police force. And I think we should, keep in mind that when we go into the strategic planning process, that we're looking at how to communicate that, as well as further refine and improve the service that we provide to our community. But I think sometimes having a statistical basis for some of your arguments can go a long way. Okay, so with that said, there's a recommendation that the board receive report POL 2023-14 for information, moved by Member Hahn, seconded by Member Hall. All those in favor? And it is passed. Thank you very much. And now we'll move on to number 9, inquiries or comments by members. We'll start with Member Hahn. Do you have any comments today?
I have no further comments. Thank you.
Over to Member Hall. Any comments or inquiries?
Nothing for me, thanks.
Over to the Mayor. Thank you, sir.
Made mine at the start, Chair.
And I have none. I've already spoken enough in this meeting. So at this point, we will then go to item 10, in-camera matters. And so as the board may move into closed sessions to discuss a personal matter regarding an identifiable an individual and a procedural matter as permitted by Section 239 of the Ontario Municipal Act, Section 34, subsection 4 of the Police Services Act and Council's Procedure Bylaw. Could I have a mover? The Mayor, and seconder, Member Hall. All those in favor? And we will move into closed session. Okay, thank you very much. Well, we're coming back from an in-camera session where we discussed a matter regarding identifiable individuals. And so all I can report is that several motions were made, right? Is that all I have to report at this point?
Yep, so you'll have to do that motion there.
Okay, so I will recommend that the closed session adjourned at, I think, 11:35, and open session resumes. Is that it? Is that?
Yep, and then you'll take a motion, like mover and a seconder.
Oh, and a mover and a seconder. Thank you, members Han and Hall. And approved.
And then no reports.
And we'll just report on the closed session, just basically that the directions that we had in the closed session be approved. Member Han, member Hall, Han and Hall. I'm sorry, it's terrible. I'm terrible. It's block. It's a block.
That's fine.
And thank you very much. And now scheduled meetings, Tuesday, December 19th, 2023 at 10 a.m. And then we go to the new year, Tuesday, January 16th, 2024 at 10 a.m. And Wednesday, February 21st, 2024 at 10 a.m. I don't need a motion for that, do I?
Nope.
And then we now move to number 14, adjournment. Recommended that the November 21st, 2023 General Police Services Board meeting adjourn at 11:36. Approved by Member Hall and